Hello and howdy. Welcome everyone to another Friday, another Angular Air. It might not be Friday with where you're viewing this from or when you're viewing this from, but welcome all the same. My name is Alyssa Nicoll. I'm very excited for today's episode. But before we get to that, I want to welcome my co-host and my guest panelist for today. I'm hoping we get to see a lot more of him. But Manfred, thank you for coming on. Thank you so much. How are you doing, darling?
I'm really fine. So thanks for doing all of this and for inviting me to this.
So excited to have you and your wisdom on the show, just to help bring out the guests and showcase them their best. So thank you. And also, of course, as mentioned, my co-host, Mike Brocchi. How are you doing today, Mike?
I am doing well, and it is currently Friday, but as with anything with programming, especially on the front end, asynchronous is hard. So it may not be Friday when you're watching, but today, right now, for us, it is Friday.
Hi, everyone. Hey,
Hi,
chat.
everybody from chat.
Yes, feel free to keep your questions, comments, everything rolling in. We will surface them as we see them. But before we get to our episode, I think let's do a sponsor shout out, yeah?
I do, yes. So today's episode is proudly sponsored by Progress. They're the team behind Kendo UI for Angular, which is a powerful library, professional grade UI components built specifically for Angular devs. A huge thank you to them at Progress for their continued support of the Angular community and Angular Air, and for helping us keep Angular Air free, accessible, and a whole lot of fun. So if you're looking to speed up your development without sacrificing design or accessibility, check out their beautifully crafted components made with performance and developer happiness in mind at Telerik.com/kendo-angular-UI.
Yes, thank you, thank you. We're very grateful. And our guest of honor, Dmytro, I'm going to bring you on. Hello, darling. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
I'm so
Glad
excited
to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show. Before we dive into your story, for those who don't know you, can you give an introduction for just like a very brief one? Because I think the whole episode is really talking about your story and our journeys as a collective. But yes, can you introduce yourself, darling?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for invitation. It's a big honor for me to take part in this episode. My name is Dmytro Mezhenskyi. I'm, first of all, Angular developer, and also I'm author of YouTube channel, Decoded Frontend. This is the channel also about Angular and web development that I have been running last 5 years already. And there I try to share my experience about Angular, show different tips and tricks, and help people to become better advanced Angular developers and learn this framework in depth.
So that's awesome. I am very excited to dive into your channel. I want to know all about your content creation and your flow, but the reason I invited you here today was I saw in the GDE Slack, they were welcoming you a couple months back as a new GDE. And I was so excited to get to know you and your story and your struggles and share that with everyone. So congrats. Welcome to the GDE family.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like a bit strange. Probably it was a bug, but I've been GDE like since 2022, actually.
No, it was a bug.
Oh, wow.
I recently, what
and
happened?
It was like in a slide deck too. I saw it. Oh no.
I think you know what happened. Recently, I moved to another email, to my working email. And that's why I changed everything in Advoku and so on. And they probably re-added me into the Slack chat. And that's why.
It's a good trick. If you need an announcement, some publicity on social media, just change your email address in the system.
So, yeah.
So it is a 2 years late welcoming party. I apologize. I'm so slow.
Yeah. It's like, it reminds me how some friends of mine, they wish me happy birthday 3 months after my birthday actually was. So this is kind of similar.
Oh, yeah.
We already covered this up front. Asynchronous is hard.
It's so hard, Mike. So, Dmytro, you give us a timeline. Tell us a little bit about how did you even get started in the dev world, much less the Angular world?
Oh, yeah. So we will start from very past. Okay, so it was like in 2009, I think, 2009 or 10. Yeah, it was my first year in university when I started to study economy. But then suddenly I encountered a video course about HTML programming, let's say. And when I wrote my first like H1 tag and turned it into red color, I was like, wow, what the hell is that? It's so amazing. So like, yeah, development immediately like was my passion. Since that, I started to explore this topic more and more. So I went through different stages, like being PHP. I was learning PHP stuff. I was learning then JavaScript and so on. So I did backend, frontend, full stack mostly. But at some point, I noticed that I like more like working with the visual part. So I like to see immediately, the result of my work, so to say. And since that, I started to focus mostly on front-end part. And back then, it was, I think, 2011 or so, I don't remember exactly already, but it was already Angular GS started to hype. And everyone was amazed by the two-way binding things, this typical example when they type into the input and everything is being reflected immediately on the page. So yeah, I started to explore Angular GS as well. Somehow React, that was at that point as well like pretty popular. Somehow I missed it, fortunately, I think. So I focused mostly on Angular GS. And then I moved from Ukraine. I'm originally from Ukraine. But in 2015, I moved in Dubai, where I started to work on local startup where we were heavily using Angular JS. And there I met a lot of talented developers who even like boosted my passion about front-end, about Angular. So we started like focusing completely on Angular. Angular 2 beta already at that time was released. It was 2016, I think. And all this RxJS stuff and everything. And I was like, okay, so it was a big challenge, RxJS, for me at that time. I was like, I couldn't understand it for a long, long time. It was so difficult. But then, yeah, after some time there, me and my wife, we decided to move to Vienna, to Austria. So we did it. And there I continued to work as an Angular developer primarily. I changed a couple of places there. I worked in just regular company, the local one, Austrian company, and the one that's big, huge enterprise, maybe Broadcom, the chip maker. Here and there we did everything except Angular. So everything you can imagine, we were doing front end with Java. We did a C# there. So like everything, the closest thing was React. It was a React application. I was working with that.
Was that hard for you? Because you talked about falling in love with the front end and having that immediate feedback. So was working there difficult, or did you still have a lot of front end that you did there?
It was like enough front end there, but still there were like technologies I didn't use before, and I had to figure out in it pretty quickly. But even faster than I learned, they closed the projects. I think it's in a big enterprise. This is, very difficult situation. So when you are onboarded, then you start working. Finally, you start like understand the project a little bit, and they say, okay, the project is closed. So, like you move to another one with completely different stack. So that was like typical big enterprise situation. And at that time, sometime like in 2020, if you remember, there was a COVID time. If someone forgot already, at that time I started my YouTube channel. It's the Decoded Frontend. At that time, I named it Dev++, and then I renamed it because it brought a lot of confusion with C++ things, and people were a bit confused.
I didn't even think about the C++ audience. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of people did, and that was the reason why I renamed it to Decoded Frontend. And there was like I already ordered the logo for Dev++, and then already I decided, okay, no, that needs to be renamed. So I had to redo a lot of these things. But yeah, I started to publish videos, and I try to be consistent, like deliver 2, maybe 3 videos per month. This is the maximum I could deliver at the time, combining it with the normal work.
Yeah.
And after a year of doing these things, I was in contact with Bonnie Brennan. I think
Bonnie.
you know her. Yeah. She invited me to Angular Air episode. If you remember, we had already an episode 2 or 3 years ago.
Throwback. I love it.
It was about Angular dependency injection, if I remember correctly.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I need to pull this one up. I'll link it in the comments.
Right. And at that time, I learned about GDE program because I didn't know about that at all. Like from Bonnie, I just noticed in the footer of your email, there was like GDE in Angular. I was like, oh, wow, what is that? And then I like started to, research what is that, what are requirements, and it turned out that I already like did most of the requirements because it's about sharing knowledge, creating content about Google products like Angular. And 1.5 years after I started my YouTube channel, I was promoted to Angular GDE. And then I started to work like mostly like a freelancing content creation. So I focused more on content creation. I decided, okay, I give it a chance because I like to do that. Why not to give it a try? If I fail, I always can hopefully get back to to a normal work. But so far it like goes, and continue create content courses and work already like a freelancer. So this is in short, if to put less 10 years of my experience in 5 minutes, that's how it is.
That's
how
amazing.
My journey looks like.
If I got it right, you taught yourself all those things in terms of Angular and programming, or did you had some courses at university?
Well, no, the university, this is the story that didn't finish. So I, after a few years, I quit my studying, my university in university, and at that time I started to do everything like to learn by myself using courses, internet, and things like that. And pretty fast I found the first work. It was like front end, but at that time it was like even it's currently front end, it's JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. But back then it was a time when there was like separate person who creates HTML and CSS and delivers this thing to the guy who already can add those fancy JavaScript stuff. And I started as this guy who did HTML and CSS. So at that time, I knew already like PHP and all these things, but it was terrible. I mean, if you could see the code from that days, it was like disaster. I'm still like surprised how these things were working.
Yeah, I always say never look into the sausage factory. You might be.
It's interesting you bring up different responsibilities and different people are responsible for the CSS and HTML versus the logic, because that's in my opinion, what brought a lot of people into Angular JS, and especially myself, into Angular JS initially, was the idea of having those separate pieces. They all lived in separate files then. So you had different people with different specialties who could be working in parallel, defining some sort of contracts or parameters between them, and everybody could be working on their same thing and building everything up synchronously.
Yeah.
So the separation of concerns is something that attracted a lot of back-end developers into front-end development, in my opinion.
Mike, would you say you're a back-end person? I feel like
I used to. I don't want to get fully into like my history as a developer, but just the quick overview is that I started with a lot of focus on the database, and then it started into some business logic with APIs, and then consuming those and validation on the front end, and then more into the front end with styling. So my progression, if you think about an application of the foundation of it, of database and exposing that data and consuming that data and presenting that data, that's kind of how my career has progressed over the last literally years. So it's been a while.
Manfred, what about you? Would you say you're back end, front end, all of it? I feel like you know all of it, but what's like in your heart?
When I started, there was not this clear separation of backend and front end. We just did web stuff back then in the late 90s and in the early 0 years. And somehow I always liked JavaScript, but the thing was, for quite a time, you have been forbidden to do JavaScript because, it was browser dependent. And so the mantra was, it should run on the server. And then perhaps you can enrich it a bit with JavaScript to make it a bit more nice. And so for quite a time, I did the full stack. Then I concentrated on the back end. And then I moved over to the front end completely because somehow the backend stuff was done for me. It felt like not much movement was there, especially in the times back then around 2012. I was in the .NET space back then, and .NET was completely newly developed as .NET Core. So there have not been a lot of new features. It was more like now what worked all the years in .NET now also works in .NET Core. And this was a bit boring for me. So I shifted my focus to Angular and the front end.
Oh, I love it. Like it feels like we've got like because I started very much front of the front end and like got a history in like design and accessibility, and I'm like from that angle, and so it feels like Dmytro and I are kind of more on the front of the front end scale, and then Mike and Manfred have a lot more experience on the back of it. But like I love that it is such a broad like genre of people and interests. But I actually wanted to bring it back, Dmytro, to your very like first the startup job you were talking about. When you were talking about it, my first thought was like, was that difficult? Like, were there a lot of struggles like working on Angular apps at the startup, or was it just a lot of fun? Like,
well, for me at that point, Angular wasn't the most difficult part. For me, the most difficult part was the language, because at the school, despite we had English classes, I was not very very good student actually. So I had to learn it from the beginning. So there was a situation like I had half a year or something to level it up to at least something like A2 level to understand basics. So when I moved, I was speaking, like I could say something, but I could understand almost nothing. Especially there are a lot of different accents that's very difficult or very different from the sources where you learn language, because they're like everything like pronounced properly, slowly, which is very different from situations on the street somewhere. And that was the biggest challenge, and that was the biggest obstacle for job searching, because I was coming like first interviews, it was like, I'm coming, I understand nothing, and I go away. And then every day I did some like reflections. What could I say better? And then I noticed that, some parts, some questions, they like every time pretty much the same. Like introduce yourself. What is your previous experience? Almost every, like maybe every second company was asking about that. So I just written this, I just learned it, and somehow, I could, let's say, save energy for next questions, for more technical questions.
Jeez. I did not even think about that barrier to entry, because I was just thinking about the stress of keeping up, like technically, with a startup, and like that's like a whole nother layer that you had to overcome. Like that's crazy. Jeez.
Yeah. But fortunately, I had in that startup a few guys from Ukraine who could help me at the very beginning, like understand what they actually want from me, because most of the tasks I didn't even understand, especially if they are not in written form. So I could use Google Translate or anything like that. Sometimes our CTO asked me like, come and okay, look, this should be blah, 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 and here and there. I was like, I have no idea what you want from me. So, but somehow, and I'm very grateful to our CTO, why he's hired me. I don't know. I think he had better options, better candidates. But for whatever reason, he hired me, and it was one of the turning points in the career. Because, as I said, from technical point of view, it was not so difficult. I knew Angular at that point already, not ideally, but I had a great front-end team there. And there were another guy, Alex, also from Ukraine, who's just very talented developer, and he taught me a lot of things. A lot of things I learned from him back then, like I use even today. I remember it was like 2016 or something. He was talking about the Redux pattern. I was like, what? Redux? I didn't hear about that at all. And then after 2 years or something in GRX or in GRX store, I don't remember how they renamed, I think, the package and GRX store, or I don't remember. So the first Redux implementations for Angular appeared, and then I was like, oh my God, that's what this guy was talking about. So yeah, I learned a lot from him there. And this is, I think, very important to be part of the team with a great development culture that where teams where the talented developers, advanced developers are working, and they ready and they can teach other people. If you're working in such a company, that's a really great opportunity to grow, even if the salary or things like that is not very great. But
do you, Mike or Manfred, have any advice for screening companies, like during interview processes, to know if it's going to have that kind of environment where it's like learning, building, growing, or if it's kind of the opposite? Like, did you ever have a way of like, how do you even ask that and get a real answer and not like a corporate?
Well, not really. I mean, I did not switch companies that often in the past, and meanwhile I'm self-employed. But back then, when we searched for talent, we had some candidates who asked us if they can have a chat with some employees. And perhaps this is a good opportunity to find out a bit more about the culture and so on. I mean, the question is, how honest would they be? I will not give you, as a manager, the most critical member of my team if you ask for such a chat.
You're going to be like, go talk to Grumpy Bob. Like, that's not who you're sending on the call.
Yeah.
I think talking to people on teams is really telling. that you can have clear access, because sure, you want to be able to talk to whoever is going to be your manager, and sure, you want to know overall company policies and everything else by talking to HR, but to be able to communicate and have an idea of the people that you'll be working with day in and day out is really good. Going back to
and you guys don't think it's weird to be like, can I talk to some team members? Like, you don't think, I don't know, I would feel so like intrusive, like I'm like
interviewing in general has traditionally been viewed as a one-sided thing, where a company is trying to evaluate a candidate to say, is this candidate a good fit? And that's usually the entire goal of an interview. But it really should be more two-sided, that employee or potential employers or candidates need to be able to say, hey, is this a good fit for me and my lifestyle and my desires for my career? And being able to say, hey, I want to talk to the people I'll be working with because I want to make sure that I'm getting what I need out of this is really, really good. And it's almost necessary, in my opinion, to be able to have those types of conversations. The other side of it is networking. If you can essentially go around the traditional channels where you find, hey, a friend of a friend or whatever through like LinkedIn or whatever social networks that you have of, hey, I see you know so-and-so that works here. Can you like arrange a call or an email or something like that, where it may not be through the traditional patterns, but hey, I just want to feel what's the deal with this company.
No, those back channels are the only way I've ever done that. I feel like being super direct in an interview and being like, I want to talk to team members. I don't think I could personally do that, but like, I just don't think I have it in me.
How you bring it up. Like, hey, I want to know who I'm going to be working with day in and day out. I'd like to be able to talk to them and be able to ask questions. And that's the other thing about interviewing. Don't go into an interview and not have any questions ready. And I know we're getting a little bit off topic, but it's still about like your dev journey and how do you figure that out and how do you navigate those waters. But have questions ready about the company. What are their methodologies? What are their metrics? How do they go about their development process and the designers, and how well do those teams interact with each other? Or is it, hey, it's just going to be you as the startup guy and me as the only technology person? Well, then obviously the communication is going to be limited there. But yeah.
No, it reminds me of how Dmytro was prepping to save energy, and it was around like the language barrier, but it's also like just not something I'm very good at. Is I'm very much we're going to figure it out live, right? And I feel like scripting out some things can be like really at least help you come off more professional, and like when they turn it around and they're like questions and you're like, no, there's nothing going on up here, right? Like it's good to have. I think
changing jobs is not something to be taken lightly. You want to be able to put as much effort to evaluate, am I making a good decision for me and for that company?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty difficult question and very like opinionated and context dependent. This whole the hiring process. It's like there is no one recipe that fits everyone, and yeah.
I really like that saying. I'm going to use that. That's really cool. No one recipe that feeds everyone. Oh, did you come up with that? Can I make you the author of that saying?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's grammatically incorrect what I said or anything like that. But what
I just think it's like a really like cool analogy for like none of these patterns or like algorithms are going to fit for one situation.
Yeah.
We've got some love in the chat, by the way. I don't know if you were seeing. Vander was saying your Angular tutorials are top notch, especially on reactive forms and dependency injection. Really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
But then there's also other love up in the chat that we've been highlighting. So I just wanted to make sure you saw.
Glad to hear that it's useful. Yeah, it's eventually my goal.
So Dmytro, I have a big question around content creation. Because before you became a GDE, you started your YouTube channel, had some back and forth on branding and naming, but you said your big thing was staying consistent, even if it was just 2 to 3 times a month. But as far as like now, what does consistent look like, and how do you come up with like content and keep yourself accountable?
Well, that's a very good question. Consistency, of course, this is the key, and I always say it, but not always follow, because there are a lot of private stuff to do, or just the work things. Or when you focused on course creation, you like focused on this particular part, and not always it's easy to be consistent. But I try to deliver now, like my absolute minimum, it's one video per month. And due to that content is sometimes pretty specific and quite in depth, it requires a lot of preparations as well. So it's not like you can just take documentation, some part of the Angular documentation, and just turn into a video. This is pretty like easy, but when you need to deliver something more, you want to be sure that the information you deliver is not misleading, or is not something that is completely different from the reality. So you need double or triple check, especially like I'm the person who checks many times. I just do really 3 times sometimes checking. I dive into the source code to figure out that it's indeed it works like this. And it takes, because of that, it takes so much time. I could do it much faster, I think, but yeah, it is as it is. And so that's why one video per month. This is minimum. Sometimes I'm very productive and can deliver 2 or even 3 videos. This is insane.
No, how do you decide though on like what you're writing about? Like this month we're going to be teaching. Like, how do you make that decision?
Well, there were a few stages. When I was starting, I started to create videos about topics I really like. We can get back to this question, why I've chosen this strategy. But currently what I do, it's more like data-driven approach. So I see comments, I see what people are asking in Discord, in comments, in YouTube, in other social media. I see it, and I see like which topics are very like popular ones, and I also see where the area of my expertise. If in this area I can deliver quality content, which is indeed valuable and unique, then the green light for this topic, for this video. If not, I don't even take, even if it's a very hyped topic, I don't do videos about it until I understand this topic good enough to deliver information. So that's why you don't see information about micro frontends on my channel at all, because I don't have enough expertise like Manfred, because I know that Manfred is a guru of micro frontend topic. Welcome, because really what the information you deliver on Angular architects, it's amazing about micro frontends. So that's my approach, how I decide what to publish. So it's intersection of my expertise, my interest, and the topics that are trending currently.
Well, to give you some kudos, without realizing that we would be talking today, I was looking back at my YouTube history, and I was watching your video about consuming and wrapping an external library earlier this week. I believe it was like Tuesday or Wednesday. I was watching that video, just randomly trying to level up my skills. So it's interesting to have that come full circle to today.
Thank you.
But I think what you say is really important. If you want to spread the word about something, it needs to be something you really like, and you should have some experience with it. And if you have the intersection of both, then it will work, I guess. Of course, you need a bit of practice, and in this space, you for sure have most experience of all of us, I guess, when I look at your professional videos. So they are really top notch. And yeah, so if you find this intersection, then this might be a good thing, I guess.
Yeah.
And with passion and trying to determine what topic to write about, it doesn't have to be something that you have experience with. It may be something that you have a need to be able to learn, or to learn for to solve a problem. And once you learn that solution, if you want to elevate what you have there, to say, all right, I've learned about it, I know how to use it, but to make sure that I fully understand it, I'm going to teach somebody about it. And I know a bunch of people who have created blogs just from the idea of, I'm going to explain what I've learned in written form, or in video form in this case, to be able to explain this, which helps solidify their own knowledge, or your own knowledge of what the topic is. Because learning something is one thing, but learning it well enough to be able to teach somebody else is a whole nother level.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a good point, actually, because you self-learn things. I mean, when you teach, you learn these things even better.
yeah.
You understand
you kind of
things
it like
on completely
highlights
next
the
level.
parts that you didn't really get, right? As you like teach something, you're like, wait a minute, how is it actually interacting behind the scenes, and why do we call that thing, right? Like, and it makes you actually learn it in more detail than I think you normally would. So I definitely agree with Mike on, don't be afraid to teach something that you don't like, that you're not using on the day-to-day, but like, I don't know, use that as to spur you on. I think staying curious in that vein always helps, because the other solution is just like Dmytro was saying, is something that you feel confident in and that you have the passion for, is also a really powerful combination. I wanted to highlight the chat. Michael was saying Decoded Frontend, best range of content depth. Also only videos I know about deep dive into source code and submitting PRs. So, and Danny was also agreeing on your quality over quantity for your content. So
I do have one question, and this is like an achievement unlocked type question, whether or not you've unlocked this achievement. So, because I've talked to other people and I've actually experienced this myself, something that you have documented, whether blog post, video, or any other format, have you then later gone back to search on that topic because you have forgotten over time or anything else, to find your name and your content that you've created as a result, to reteach yourself what you had once learned?
I had situations like that. It's like awesome. Constant learning loop, like self-learned LLM model, but instead LLM, it's yourself.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm not alone. It's a humbling experience to learn from yourself.
But I mean,
as I've gotten older, it's not as humbling as
I don't see anything bad with that, because we have our memory has limits, and taking into account how Angular is being evolved so fast, it's hard to keep things in your head. Recently, the last thing I did, I was googling literally syntax is ng4 directive and how to resolve indexes. The thing I did not so often, but with this new 4 blocks, this new control flow, I totally forgot the syntax of the ng4 structural directive, because I didn't use it for a while. And that's okay, I think, because come on, we should free up memory for the new stuff. We cannot keep everything together. And videos and articles, it's kind of the hard drive where you put the stuff that you reference sometimes.
You're like offloading your brain's knowledge into a different place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh God, that's beautiful. I wanted to talk a little about if you have any advice for people on their dev journey, whether it's they're teaching themselves and they're in another career, or they're in college, or wherever they are, or maybe they're in a job but they want to level up and start the interview process, or maybe it's like you were doing country moves involving with your jobs and interviews and language barriers and things. So just, do you have any knowledge over all of that for developers in general?
Well, I can just share my experience. So the most, I think important, what I would do if I just started, I would probably start asking questions at the interview. Like, you have questions to you, but I would also ask questions, and I would asking about, and I already mentioned it earlier, about the development culture in this company. Do they write unit tests and other type of tests? Do they have continuous deployment, continuous integration stuff? Do they do different best practices? Do they use last versions of the frameworks and things like that? So, because surprisingly, not every company still does it. Yeah, and these questions, if you find such a company that does all this development cycle properly, I think even if they offer, and usually this company offers less salary, you get such a useful experience in this case, so that it will pay off later, like 3-5x more. That's for sure, because this is, especially at the beginning when we learn these processes, it's very hard then change them. When you stuck with the bad processes, bad practices, then it's pretty hard, to rethink all these things and start to do the things the right way. I actually did I was in a similar situation when I did freelancing also at some time, and I thought that with PHP and jQuery I can build literally everything, like next Facebook, LinkedIn, what you want, everything I can build with PHP and jQuery. And in my bubble, because I didn't work in the team back then, and there were not so many, like streams or where you could connect it with the people, and people could tell you that you are doing actually something terrible, right? So I was in this bubble, and I thought that I'm actually a good one, but it was not like that. And when I realized that, it was like a big surprise for me. So being in the great culture, using great proper software development life cycles and processes, this is important, and this is what I would looking for. I would looking for such a companies where I could absorb this proper experience, and what would be my focus. I think in such companies, people grow very fast. Like in 2-3 years, you can outperform people who have 10 years of experience, but we're in one company, in one bubble where everything is stable, nothing happens, and these people don't evolve. It happens very often. When you meet the person like 15 years experience, and they don't do it.
Yeah. If you have 15 years, you may have 15 years of experience, but they may be 15 years of the same experience.
Yeah.
In which case you're not growing and evolving.
Yeah. So when I remember I took part in the also interviewing process, but as an interviewer, and we like almost always when we see CV, the years of experience, it's like immediately, okay, this is not even priority. We were watching at the section with previous jobs and responsibilities, what these persons were doing there, tech stack, what they did, how their career growth was, like if there were promotions during this time. That I think the most important thing. But years of experience, we were interviewing the person with 25 years experience. He knew JavaScript when I was like a little kid. Yeah, but he was working in the company. He was a good person, yeah, but he stuck in the old stack for a long time. And when we started asking the basic Angular questions, he couldn't answer. Even JavaScript, some modern JavaScript questions, they were challenging.
I think there's got to be, even if you are stuck in a stale stack. I think that's when you do things like side projects, or you night owl for a bit on different things to kind of skill level in the areas that you're weak in before you do the interview gauntlet of death.
I do want to go back and touch on one thing that you said, is that to ask questions during the interview process. I haven't in a while, but I used to conduct interviews as well. And one of the specific goals that I had on every single interview I ever did was to ask a question that the candidate did not know. And whether or not I had to get really, really deep into a technology or not, I needed to find something that they didn't know.
You just wanted to see if they would say the words.
Well, so that's part of it, to admit they didn't know. But how do they then handle that? Are they using that as a learning experience to say, hey, I'm not really sure, but can you tell me how that is or what the answer is, which shows the desire and the willingness to learn. So honestly, there were a lot of candidates that I turned away because they either wouldn't admit it or come up with something that was completely wrong, and then would not follow up to say, hey, what is that answer? And it could have been later. We could have moved on to other questions. And at the end of the interview, you present the ability to ask questions. And if they don't come back and say, hey, what was the deal with that question? How do I answer that question correctly? What is the correct answer? Because that shows the willingness and the desire to learn. Because the other thing I wanted to touch on is learning. The most important thing to learn, and this isn't going to be a technology or anything else, what you need to learn, and this is a self-reflection thing, what you need to learn about yourself is, how do you best learn? Is it blog posts? Is it university? Is it videos? Whatever format that is. This way you can tailor your learning through your career so that you can learn most effectively, because that's the only thing that's going to be constant in a technology career or programming career, is learning new things. You have to learn new things. You have to evolve and adapt. So if you can learn how you learn best, then you can make yourself more successful.
Some really good
absolutely.
advice.
Yeah, by the way, I recently noticed also the way some form of interview, like, I don't know how to officially call it, I call it stress interview, when you get a task, so implement some certain feature, and this feature is huge, and you know it, and everyone knows that, and they give you only 2 hours or something to do, and actually they do not expect that you finish the feature, but they check how you set up priorities. So either you focus on creating, for example, you need to implement the complex form, right? You don't know exactly how to approach it, and you can start to do something you just know, and you can create HTML, CSS, and nicely looking form that doesn't work, or you provide some ugly form but it actually works, and what you choose, the path you choose, it's actually the point they want to validate how you choose their priority. And of course, the right one would be deliver something working but ugly, rather than some rubber.
You think so? You don't think something pretty that doesn't work is the answer?
I don't know. If you're not designer, then I would prefer something working.
It depends. Like, what is the team structure there like? Do you have a lot of people on that team that are highly skilled with JavaScript for the functionality to work, that are maybe lesser skilled with the design aspect? So you may want to tailor your priorities to say, hey, I'm going to focus on making it look right, and then the people that could potentially help me get this to the finish line maybe coming from the other side to be able to resolve what the technical issues or the coding issues versus the style issues. So, but I think that you get into then documenting what you're doing with to-dos or stories or a README or however you're organizing what you're doing for that. Say, all right, this is my checklist. And maybe you say, all right, well, this is the reason why I focused on this or whatever. Because I think that if you're going through and somebody's doing something formal as part of the interview to say, hey, I'm going to give you this much to do and this much time to do it, then there should be some sort of discussion about, hey, why did you take this approach? Why did you focus on this? So as long as you can explain.
Well, I think true, like Mike, I think it's a great idea, but like making it available up front so that you get to that next phase. So like putting like whatever, like your README or your decision making in the comments or whatever, putting that very easily accessible for the interviewers, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are taking part in those, right? Like, here's your 2-hour challenge, record yourself doing it and send it in. And so I think, you know, you might not make it to that next phase to explain yourself. So make sure you put that in there, because I think that's very common today. The stress, I liked how you put it. I've never heard it put like the stress challenge, but that is what they are.
So here's the other thing. And this is not so much to individuals as candidates, but more so for companies or people trying to decide what their interview process is going to be. If you're going to have someone take time out of their day to complete something for you, please make sure that you include that as part of the interview, that it actually provides a way of validating, hey, the reason we had you do this is so that we can discuss it, not just, yeah, we wanted to see if you can do A, B, and C and throw it away and not be able to talk about it, because that kind of invalidates people's time. So again, that's the interview side from the candidate side of, well, why did you waste my time, and potentially put a negative impact in the candidate's mindset.
Yeah.
I've even heard of some companies even compensating with like a gift card or something like that.
Oh,
So
really? For the challenge? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time to do this. Thank you. Here's a gift card for some.
I feel like that's like a really high bar. I feel like just even a reason why you weren't moved on to the next, because I feel like most people, they never hear back, right? Like it's not even a no, it's just silence. So I feel like bare minimum some communication about, you know,
all right,
this
Alyssa,
is what went wrong.
Did you submit a picture of a cat that you drew as your coding challenge result?
Listen, ASCII art is coming back, okay? We are almost to the top of the hour, gentlemen. Does anyone else have any last minute pieces of advice for developers on their dev journey, inside or outside of Angular, of course? But just, I've really loved the conversation, though, Dmytro. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey with us.
Thank you too.
I will say, if you're looking to, again, advance your learning, the two people over here, up there, and here producing great content. Yep. Producing great content. If you're looking to level up your skills, take a look at their content.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the chat has definitely resonated that. So
well, I really liked what Mike said before. You need to learn how you learn best. That's why I was asking in the beginning if you learned it by yourself and how this worked for you. I think a lot of people are self-taught in our community. I'm also quite self-taught. I learn quite well by reading stuff and trying it out. And something that always helped me when learning new things is learning on 2 levels. One level is learning what I need now, frameworks, tools, libraries, stuff like this. And then it's also about learning stuff that might be a bit boring, but that is long-lasting, those underlying concepts. And I thought about this, especially in the last weeks a lot, because nowadays LLMs are a big topic and everything is new and everything is changing for you. But if you have some knowledge about how it works underneath the covers, then this really gives you hold. So I think both levels are important. However, there is an issue. Somehow those 2 levels are contradicting, because if you learn new things, you don't have that much time for learning concepts and vice versa. So it's also about finding a good balance for you. And perhaps this is more art than science. I don't know.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And teach others. I think, we already barely touched this topic that when you teach someone, you better understand the topic, and also the person who you teach can ask you things that like might trigger some additional investigation and understanding deeper the topic you want to learn. Because
Totally,
a lot of things I learned during my preparations to the video, like dependency injection. I knew that, like, it was like, I thought I knew how it works, but when I started my preparation, looked at the source code, then I realized, okay, my assumptions were correct, but this is not how I thought it was working. It was working differently. The assumptions were correct. And with many things, it was like that. So don't be afraid to teach others, create content that definitely worth it.
I love that. That was a mentor of mine when I left my first startup. He told me, he said, keep making videos, like no matter what, because he knew video content creation was something I was passionate about. But he was like, don't, like, even if it's just little ones that they're just for you, like keep making videos. And that I've tried to keep that as far as like whatever content creation it is, right? Passing it on to others is so important, and it keeps you from growing stagnant and stale as well. So I very much second your advice, Dmytro. It has personally helped like my career growth and my personal dev journey as well. So I love it. Thank you all.
I have one other thing. So,
Mike.
Going back to learning, is that while it's important to learn how you learn and how you get information in, don't just focus on, is it written, is it video, is it a book or class or whatever. Also focus on what helps you retain that information. Is it just consuming that, or for a lot of people, including myself, it really helps to follow tutorials and write the code yourself. Don't just look at it and read it, but also write the code yourself. Set up an environment with things like Stackputs and other online things. You don't even need a local environment. You can do it all in the browser now, to be able to go through the motion of typing out the code to see it work. That little bit of dopamine, to be able to get that success, to be able to build that muscle memory and that brain muscle memory to say, hey, I know I can make this work, to build that confidence too.
Awesome. Yeah, you need to make your fingers a bit dirty, and it sticks a bit more. And also discussing about it afterwards with other people always helped me to see the bigger picture of it.
Yeah, that's it's really like with learning. It's like with learning a new language. Like if you just learn foreign words, in few days you just forget them. You have to use them in the context immediately, and only then brain starts to remember those words.
That is so good. Wise words, man. If I could snap, you would hear snapping.
You can't snap either?
I'm very bad at it.
Yeah. The other thing with teaching doesn't have to be writing a formal blog post. It doesn't have to be producing a video with rechecking it 3 times like Dmytro does to be able to make sure that everything is there, or formalize a full course or session that Manfred produces. It could be a lunch and learn. It could just be going over and talking to somebody else that you work with or somebody else that codes and say, hey, I just learned about this thing. It's really cool. Check it out. Here's a 2-minute conversation of me explaining it to you. That's also teaching. It doesn't have to be formal teaching. It could just be an informal conversation with another dev.
Do you all bore your spouses with like I literally make Zach sit down and listen to me tell him about the new stuff coming out in Angular. He's not an Angular dev.
He's a dev. My wife has admitted to me many times of, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I could not care less.
I just try to get him so excited. I'm like, look.
Yeah, so my girlfriend is also from a different area.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to avoid such
Yo, really? I was the opposite. I was like, let's win them over to the coding side of life.
But I will try it with my boy. He is now 9 years old, and I want to implement a little computer game with him. So let's see how it goes.
Oh, yeah. All the little ones. All right. Well, we are past the top of the hour. Does anyone have any picks that they want to highlight before we wrap this week? That's something inside or outside of technology that you just want to give a shout out to that maybe was helpful or useful this week to you or cool?
I do not.
Well, in my case, something completely out of deck, but something that made this week a bit more funny for me was TV shows. There is the new Dexter TV show. It started last week, I guess. And there is the new Star Trek Strange New Worlds season 3. So it's really good so far. 3 episodes are here meanwhile, and a new one is unlocked on a weekly basis. So
it is on my list but I haven't started yet. So that's good to know. That's good to know. Dmytro, do you have any? Oh, what'd you say, Mike?
I was just saying I have a few TV shows that I haven't started watching, but I am extremely excited, but I'm trying to stay diligent in order and just get through one to get to the next. But the one I'm most looking forward to is Dexter Resurrections, I think is the other one. A little darker, but I think I don't know how much of it is released because I have done my best thus far to ignore any spoilers or anything else. But don't worry, I don't have any spoilers because I haven't watched it at all yet. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I will be the main nerd here and say about Angular. So I learned today that it seems like in the next minor release of Angular, zoneless is stable, which is cool.
I know when they were
20.2
talking about it, they were like, "Yeah, we're using it," and I was like, "Oh, you're," and they're like, "Everything." I was like, "Oh." And this was like a couple months ago. I was like, so everyone should just start like, geez.
So when I mentioned I watched your video earlier this week, the very next one was about zoneless. I have a project that I spun up, but I got pulled away, so I haven't gotten to play with it yet. But basically, to summarize that video, signals. Anything that you're binding into in the template uses signal.
Yeah. Michael says stable 2.2. Yeah. Pull request drops.
When is the next? Do we know when the next version drops? I know it's on a very regular cadence, but I always
October, November will probably be.
Is it okay? I always have to look it up. I'm always like,
yeah.
My only issue is that I dislike the name zoneless. Because everything else, when we went to standalone talked about what is the new thing versus it wasn't called moduleless. It was called standalone. It was about what we're moving to and
not what we're moving from.
It is, not what was taken away. So
moduleless.
I'm gonna start using it, and whenever people look at me, because like you would be surprised the number of people who have yet to adopt standalone. So the next time I'm talking about like preaching standalone, I'm gonna be just like, module-less.
No, quite the opposite. Try not to say zoneless, because that, as somebody new coming in with 21 or plus.
What do you talk about? How do you refer to it then?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the right term is, but if I say, hey, this application is zoneless, then somebody who doesn't have any knowledge about Angular needs to come in then and say, oh, zoneless? Well, what are zones? Well, when they don't really need to learn that at all. So if there's some sort of name that could be associated that talks about what the new current state is going to be versus what the old state is not, then I think that would be stronger from a message.
I feel like it's just going to be a non-issue in a couple versions, because like once it's gone, and we just won't talk about it, right? It'll just be the way that Angular is, right?
Yeah, ideally, yes, but in the interim, as the transition phase is happening, actually starting with 20.2. So in the next week or two, whenever that is actually released or is out, I'm not sure. My current
Michael was
application is on 19.
saying 20.2 Angular 18th the week of, and 21 the week of November 18th. So thank you, Michael.
So in the next month. So that conversation is going to be important. But if we can talk about how it's explicit change detection, maybe if that's the way to talk about it.
Yeah, he was saying like how they say not to talk about Ivy since it's been the default forever. Yeah. There's just, it's like Bruno, right? There's things that we just don't talk about.
Yeah.
No, well, we are very much over, so I'm going to let everyone go. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you so much for coming on, Dmytro, and thank you for being our panelists today, Manfred, and co-host Mike. I hope all of your weekends are very beautiful and stress-free. And then we'll see you all on the next.
Thank you so much. Thank you all, guys. Thank you, everyone, who joined the stream.
And check out Decoded Frontend if you haven't.
Yeah.